I'm Sanford Henderlie. I'm professor of music, and I am the director of the music technology here at Loyola University. I've been involved in the music industry since 1979, actually 74 in many different angles, first starting in Europe and then going to Texas and then coming here to New Orleans in 1981. And I've been a performing gigger all of that time playing jazz, and I've also been involved in promotion of concerts here in New Orleans in the 80s and 90s in particular, with Philip Glass to the Cronus Quartet, filling Roussel twice over. It's big production stuff. And then also I have a record company. I have 25 CDs, and that's a lot of work as well. Well, first of all, I've composed music for the television stations in town and national organizations, so I've been able to use my skills as a composer, which is my degree, to compose music through MIDI for television and video production, and that goes hand in hand with music technology in particular. And then I've recorded all of the CDs that I've done. I've recorded maybe 50 or 60 CDs, and with that experience, that really helps in teaching the recording classes, both recordings in analog and also in using of Pro Tools. We are basically a service wing of the music business program. We do not have a degree in it, and that's not the scope of this. So we basically introduce all of the students here in the music industry studies to get a feel for recording and get a feel for MIDI. And some people will take off and go further with it. Others are afraid of it and are, say, in advertising or PR or management, something like that, and they're afraid of that. So what I try to do is get everybody comfortable with it. Those people that are really interested will take off and become more interested, maybe go to a graduate school that offers programs like that. We have some of the greatest equipment now. In the Mac Lab, we have just upgraded to DigiDesign 002s that allow us to teach Pro Tools. We have a great synthesizer in the Yamaha Motif, and we have G4 Macs that are real powerful to run this stuff. And we have a whole bunch of software to do everything from music technology to graphics and video. In the recording studio, we've just upgraded to Pro Tools HD3, which is the highest end of DigiDesign's Pro Tools, and we just got it in this summer. We've also just received a Studer 24-track 2-inch tape recorder that we received from a studio in New York, and we're going to integrate that into our analog program. And 2-inch is what everybody was using in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and a lot of people are still using the 2-inch tape recorder for analog production because it gives a warm sound. The technology is changing all the time, and if you were to see my office right now, I have magazines, I have emails constantly, I have equipment everywhere that I'm throwing away because it's changing every few years. We try to refresh everything at least every 3 years. Some things we want to keep forever, in the studio in particular, because you have certain preamps that are very high-end and vintage, and those are the kinds of things you keep. Others you have to keep refurbishing. I've got maybe in this office right now about 20 old computers that I'm giving to people because we're no longer in need of them, and we have to refresh the computers every 3 years. Some of the other technology every few years, but it's basically computers, and computer companies know how to sock it to you. And I was able to just receive a grant for $160,000. I get one of those about every 3 years too, and that's how the Mac Lab was developed, and that's how we're upgrading the Pro Tools in the studio. Well, in 1981, we had 2 mansions on St. Charles, and this building wasn't here. And there was an electronic music studio that was in the bedroom of the middle mansion. And it was really pretty amazing space because you were basically with very little equipment. We had a Moog synthesizer and tape recorders. When we moved into this building, Dr. Aber had the idea, well, let's put a recording studio in here. And he started with the idea of having an 8-channel recording studio, and we ended up getting a 16-channel. He thought it was kind of easy to do, like you just plug it into the wall and go, but it takes a lot to solder the wires, run hundreds of cables in the studio, and I had a teacher assistant and myself put the first studio together. It was a 16-track, 1-inch Tascam, and very, very little stuff. And then finally we had I was able to get a grant in 1987, the first grant from this group that I keep getting them from. And I was able to rebuild the studio. And in 91, I was able to get Pro Tools for the first time. And then every couple of years, I've been able to get some money from somewhere. And it's evolved since then. And then we've had a music, in the late 80s, I built a music lab in the music building in room 203. And that's evolved 3 times. And now that is a set of Dell computers and a synthesizer for basically music theory, therapy, music ed, and other people that want to use it as a Dell. And then we have the Mac lab in the main library that is basically for music technology and graphics, and really powerful stuff. I actually had always had some equipment. I guess you could call it just simply at first taking the amplification of a gig, learning how to plug a microphone in and getting a sound. And then you start to manipulate sounds, and I said, that's kind of cool. And we only had reel-to-reel tape recorders at that time. And then I went to graduate school at North Texas State in 1979, and I took some really advanced electronic music classes, learning on a Moog and developing tunes or compositions that were for performance that would take 4 months to compose, because you were using 3 different tape recorders and you could only get one sound at a time. Very, very archaic compared to what we can do today. The same thing that I did in 1980, 81 through the late 80s, I could do in 3 or 4 months then, I can do now in a night sometimes. That's how technology has really changed. This program is a broad general program to let the students get a little bit of everything that's going on in the music industry. And excuse me, if you were to try to do everything, you would not be very successful. But if you want to let this stuff come in and then use it to your advantage, and if you all of a sudden really like something like merchandising or promotion, start getting involved in that in the club and maybe outside as well, and start honing your intern toward that. If you're involved in recording, you get involved in the recording aspects of things, and you start doing that as you become juniors and seniors. But as freshmen and sophomores, you want to let everything come to you and explore it, and then go out and look at certain things. But again, you've got a lot of things going on. You've got religious studies, philosophy, chemistry, et cetera, et cetera. So you have to be careful with how much you can do. And we understand that, something like the club is a club. It's not part of the curriculum, but we even have some ideas kicking around with the faculty right now to incorporate everything a little more inclusive, which I think is exciting. One of the reasons we started this program 5 or 6 years ago at Loyola through Dr. Swansea initially was because we saw a need for educating people to help this community. Although a lot of our students come from outside this community, there are a lot that stay here, there are a lot that come from here, and it's only going to help. It might take a generation to get it to another level, but it's doing this little by little. and we might be offering more. And through the students and the club and through the whole program, we're pushing forward. And you know, it's a young program. It's only 5 years old, and we have a lot to offer. And when I see, when I go to the various conferences around the country, you get to see where everybody else is and what their focus is at various universities. And that's a good thing to be going to these conferences, because you actually get to see where things are. And we're in a very good position right now nationally, and it's really exciting.